Can you help me by welcoming our online audience this morning? We're so glad that you've joined us today. Thank you very much for tuning into Sisterhood Online. We just trust that you're going to enjoy today's message as we continue on this series of Rhythms of Grace and talk about pace sitters and Sabbath stealers today, and particularly in the area of relationships. So week 5, we're here at week 5. This is the halfway mark of this series. Can you believe it? I have learned so much. I learned so much from writing this curriculum. It really challenged me. It really gave me peace in a lot of ways. It really helped me self-evaluate. I'm still a lot in that process. But coming to this, I want to just talk about, I know Liz did a fantastic job last week. She talked about pace setters and Sabbath stealers, what they are. And she also talked about what your yoke is. And she talked about how your yoke is your work that you do for God, your purpose in life, the labor that we do for Him, and also the things that God's given you to carry. She did a great job of putting all that out. You know, the different pace setters are those things. I just want to kind of go back and review a little bit in case you weren't here. Pace setters are those things which will set the pace of our lives. There are certain things that set the pace of our lives. They have a real impact on how we schedule our time, what we do with our money, what we do, how fast we move, how slow we move. There are things that have an impact on our lives that are pace setters, and they have a legitimate claim to be pace setters in our lives. Your work for God, your purpose in life, your yoke is a pace setter in your life. Whether you want it to be or not, whether you are intentional about it or not, it sets the pace for your life. It's one of those things that will have an impact on the speed that you live, on your decisions. It sets a pace. Now, when we're not intentional about these pace setters, when we don't realize that they are indeed setting the pace, what happens is they just take on this speed and this pace. They begin to drive us, right? So with pace setters, there are things that have a legitimate claim to be a pace setter in our lives, but at the same time, we also have to continually be intentional about how those things impact the pace of our lives. This might sound kind of abstract right now, just stick with me. One of those things that is a pace setter in our lives is relationships. Our inner circle in particular, the people that we spend most of our lives with are pace setters. They will set the pace of our lives whether we want them to or whether we don't want them to. How many of you can attest to the fact that your inner circle has an impact on the pace of your life? Yes, I can attest to that too. So I want to read, we're going to start, we have a little verse here at the top of your workbook, and it's from Exodus chapter 18, verse 17b, the second half of 17, 18, and 23. I've just kind of paraphrased it from the New King James. It says this, and this is Jethro coming to Moses, and Jethro was looking at Moses, looking at all the things he was trying to do. Moses was called to lead the people from Israel. Moses was delivering his people, and he had a lot of work to do. He had legitimate work to do. He had a call from God to fulfill. But at the end of the day, Moses could not alone do every single thing that God called him to do. And so Jethro was kind of reprimanding Moses and saying, look, it's time to he was like Moses' life coach. He was his father-in-law, but also his life coach. And he gave Moses this advice. He says, the thing that you do is not good. Wow. How about telling the deliverer of Israel, the thing that you're doing is not good. Look what you're doing. Moses was sitting out every day, and people were lining up around the block, waiting in line for him to judge their cases. This person, owes me a lamb, and they didn't give me a lamb, and this person owes me money, and this person did this wrong. And they were waiting in line, if you would think a line outside the courthouse, and it was the only courthouse in town, and there was one judge, and he acted as lawyer and judge and senator. Wow, imagine that for the entire nation. Imagine the level of work that was. Every petty dispute down to major crimes had to go take their place in line. This is what Moses was doing. And you know what Moses thought? Moses probably thought, I'm the one that has the law. I'm the one that's called. God called me to be the deliverer of Israel. This is my responsibility. All of this hinges on me. These people don't know. And imagine Moses knowing the people that he led. We know the many ways that the people of Israel, a lot of the Bible tells us about this. They were stubborn, they were stiff-necked, they didn't honor God's laws a lot of times. So imagine how Moses felt like, God, if I don't do this, this is going to be a disaster. What's going to happen if I if I don't do this myself, right? But Jethro, his father-in-law, comes to him and said, Moses, this thing you're doing, it's not good. How many of you can even see yourself right there? The thing I'm doing, it's not good. It's too much for me. He says, both you and these people who are with you will surely wear themselves out. For this thing is too much for you. You are not able to perform it by yourself. You know what? As hard as it is sometimes to realize that we're not able to do it all, there's also an incredible sense of relief that comes from realizing that we can't do it all. You know, sometimes I think that's the most responsible and grown-up thing we can do, is to say, in reality, I can't do it all. And I think that a lot of times we're trying to save the day by trying to do it all, but what we're really doing, what did he tell Moses? He said, you and these people who are with you will surely wear yourself out. In other words, Moses, this isn't really just about you doing the right thing, you doing the work that you need to do, you answering all these questions. There are people with you who need you to lead at a higher level. There are people with you who maybe aren't standing in this line. There are people who are waiting in this line, and it would benefit them if you would get some help because they've been waiting here for months just to see you for 3 minutes. You're going to wear everybody out. Everybody that you're trying to lead, everybody that you're trying to influence, everybody that you're responsible for. You think you're doing the best thing, but you're really a bottleneck because you will not ask for the help you need. And you will not come to terms with the fact that you can't do it all. Wow, I bet Moses did not see himself that way. I bet he saw himself as really doing the right thing. I bet he saw himself as really doing exactly what God called him to do, but feeling the weight of, gosh, is this going to be the rest of my life sitting here in this blasted desert with a line of people going around the camp waiting to ask me about the justice of someone stealing their lamb, or someone owes you a sheep, or my cattle got outside the confines, and is this what my life is going to be? Because this is not what I thought God meant when he said deliver his people, but who else is going to do it? So you see what God had called Moses to do, and I want to point this out. God had called Moses to deliver his people from Israel and then bring them somewhere, bring them into the promised land. But along the way, on this journey, God delivered them a law. He gave them a code of ethics. He gave them a spiritual way to engage with him. And what that did was it gave them a legal system to engage in. So Moses, instead of bringing the people toward the promised land, all of a sudden turned into a judge, doing nothing but ruling on cases all day. Now, yeah, this is a part of Moses' job. It's kind of the way he needs to make sure that's happening. But do you understand how if Moses had sat there the rest of his life and just done that task, that he would have actually abdicated the real calling on his life, which was to bring people into the promised land? You know, sometimes we get stalled in life because the task at hand and the people that are the loudest, actually, they seem the most urgent. They're driving us hard. They're keeping us in a place where maybe we should have been for a season, but that's not ultimately where we should be headed. And to stop right there, as much as it's hard to drop the ball, as much as it's hard to delegate, as much as it's hard to put that down, as much as it's hard to disappoint people, it will keep us from entering the promised land that God's called us to if we don't get up and move. And this is what Jethro was trying to tell Moses. He said, it's not just about you. It's about the people that you're leading. I wonder how many times the people that we influence watch us and they think, oh, this is the way it's supposed to be done. And all the time, we're not really modeling what we should be modeling because we're not modeling healthy boundaries. We're not modeling a healthy sense of identity. We're not modeling a true prioritizing of the real direction God's called us to do because we're sidetracked with all the things that seem so urgent. Well, it's very, very difficult in our day and age to silence the voice of the urgent so that we can focus on what's really important, because sometimes the things that are the most important are the things that don't seem urgent right now. They're the long-term things. So they're not pressing on us every day. We're not feeling them every day, but when we get to 5 years out, 10 years out, that's when we'll feel it. We'll go, oh, you know what? I wish I had, why didn't I do that? But so we have to be aware. We have to be able to shut out the voice of the urgent so we can focus on what's important. This is what Jethro was doing for Moses. And he says, if you do this thing, which basically a strategy he shared with him about delegating, choosing other righteous men to help him judge. He gave him a strategy for sharing the load. If you do this thing, and so God commands you, then you'll be able to endure, and all this people will also go to their place in peace. He's like, if you want to, Moses, pace yourself for the long run. If you want to endure, and if you want, see all these people waiting here for you to make a decision? If you want these people to leave you alone, if you really want them to go to their place in peace, both meaning their homes and to the place that God promised them, then you have to actually get up and you've got to let other people help you. You're not able to do this on your own. I don't know what it is about, I think women in particular, we feel so guilty when we ask for help. Legitimate help. I'm not talking about going to your friend and crying on his shoulder. I'm not talking about, venting to somebody. That gives us a temporary help. But I mean, when it comes to putting practices in our lives, strategies in our lives, really doing things to take our hands off of certain things and put them onto other things. When it comes to telling people, I just really don't feel like I can handle this anymore. It goes beyond a simple like, oh, that's disappointing, or oh, that's too bad. It touches a deep sense of inadequacy in us. It speaks to this, I think, this deeply rooted kind of failure thing that we have. Like, I don't know where we get it from, but when we have to admit that we can't do everything, it's like we escalate it from like, I'm just busy today, or this is just a season, to I'm a failure as a woman. We've got to stop that all or nothing thinking. You will never be able to move your life forward if you are not able to identify the kind of person that you want to be, the kind of person that God has called you to be. Really, you should do the God thing first and then you, right? And then begin to take initiative and give yourself permission to put strategy around your life that will move you toward that person and get you out of sitting in the desert in the sand making judgment calls about little things that ultimately are urgent but won't matter in the long run.